Hello and welcome back. Now in this video we want to add our validation schemes. Remember that we will need to validate the data that the user sends from the client to the API gateway and then to the auth service. And for the validation we are going to be using the Joy package. So go to npm and then search for Joy. Okay, so this is the package we are going to use. We can check the documentation. Okay, it says get started. We already have it installed. So it's just an object schema, okay, because we're going to be sending an object and we want to validate the object. Okay, you can use it to validate different types. Okay, so for the data we are going to send from the client, when the user creates an account, we're going to send username, password, country value, email, profile picture. Okay, so to validate an object, if you don't already have any experience with Joy, it's just used for validation as a schema. There are different types of tools. There are tools, once we get to the front end, the React application, I will show you how we can use another tool as well to validate. So in our application, for some of the services and for some of the endpoints and data, we are going to do or perform validations on the front end and on the back end. Okay. One of such data is the sign-up data. So we're going to validate it on the back end. We are also going to validate on the front end. Okay. So for example, if you want to validate a username, you import Joy, you create this joy.object. Okay. And then username, well, what are the properties? It has to be a type string. It can be alphanumeric. Okay. Minimum 3 characters, maximum 30 characters, and it's a required property. So if you send a request and it validates, it checks, okay, that the username, either it does not exist, because here it says it's required. If the username is not part of the object you are sending, it's going to throw an error. Or if the username is part of it, but it's not a string, or the username is less than 3 or is greater than 30, it's going to throw an error. Okay, and then if you want to validate a password, you can use this regex and this pattern. Okay, these are some, and also emails if you want to validate as well. Okay, for us the validation is not going to be complex, just some string validations. Okay, so for us to do this, we need to create some schemes. In your source folder, create a folder called schemes. Okay, so the schemes, we will have 3 schemes. We have the sign up scheme, we have the sign in scheme, and the password reset. Okay, and the password resets, the email schema. Okay, so let's start with the sign up. So inside the schemes, create a file called signup.ts. okay, here I will import Joy and then also import object schema from Joy. Okay, yeah, this should be from. Okay, there are other object schemas out there like Yup. We are going to see how to use that in React. Okay, and now we want to create our sign up schema. So sign up schema of type object schema equal to, remember it's an object, it's going to be an object, so we say joy.object. Okay, and then for us we can say joy.object. There we can use .keys as well. Okay, so to check the keys itself, so sets or extends the allowed object keys. Okay, and then inside these keys, if you don't want to use the keys, you can just pass the validation into this object right here, but here we are extending it, so it will check for the keys. Now the first one is username, so we want our username to be of type string. And I think I want the minimum to be 4 characters, the maximum to be 12 characters. Okay, and it's going to be a required. You can add it if you want. You can say dots required. Okay, and then you can set your own custom messages. Okay, if we use it the way it is, then the error messages that will be sent to the users will be the ones generated by the Joy library. But for us, we want to be able to set our own custom messages. So I can say messages is going to be an object as well. Now the keys for these messages are string.base. So this is for the error object that is usually returned from joy. The base message is inside this key, string.base. So that is what we want to change. I'll set this to username must be of type string, and then string.minimum. Okay, so this string.base is going to be the error message if the username is not a string. Then string.main is going to be the error message if it does not meet this minimum criteria. Okay, I'll just call it invalid username. And then for the marks as well, I'll call this invalid username. And then we don't want it to be empty. Okay, string.empty. Okay, because probably the username could be sent with a key, but the value will be empty. Now for our own case, it's going to be different because we are going to perform validations on the front end as well. But if probably in your own application your validation is only applied on the back end, then you might want to also check here to make sure that it's not an empty string. Okay, I'll say username is a required field. Okay, so for us it will hardly be an empty string because on the front end we are going to perform validations as well. Okay, so now we have for username. Let me go ahead, duplicate this multiple times. Okay, so we have, this is going to be password, then we have country, then we have email, and then the profile picture of the user. Okay, so profile picture. So when the user is creating an account, these are the data that we require from the user. I can go ahead and export this. So export. Okay, so these are the information we require from the user. Okay, now you can go ahead and add your own validation whichever way you want. So for the password, it's going to be a string, minimum value 4, maximum value, maybe for the password, the maximum value for the password should be 12. And then custom messages, you can say password must be a string here, invalid password, and then password is a required field. Okay, but for us on the front end, we are not going to allow the user to send the request to log in with an empty username or password field, but I'm just adding it here. So in case you decide not to add validation on your front end, but it's really a good practice if you add validations both on your front end and your back end. Okay, and then for country, yeah, there's not going to be length, so it's going to be just a string required. And then the messages, I'll remove these two here. I'll say country must be of type string, then country is a required field. Okay, and then for email, here we'll use the email validation, so I'll just say email. Okay, and it's required. Okay, so here I'll say I don't need this. Email must be of type string. This will be string.email, which is for this validation. I'll say invalid email. And then for empty, this will be email is a required field. And then lastly, for the profile picture, we don't need these two validations. Okay, and this is going to be the same as this. Base, so this will be, maybe I can add a different message. Please add a profile picture. These are the messages that will be shown to the user. And here I can say profile picture is required. Profile picture is required, and I can do the same here. Okay, so this is the schema for our sign up and the validation. So if any of these properties coming from the client does not meet the requirements, we are going to send an error.